back to Newsmaker Live with me, Kendall Burton. My guest tonight, the Press Secretary to the Prime Minister, Mr. G.D. Pierre Emmanuel. Before our break, we were discussing some of the Prime Minister's statements with regards to Michael Shastney's support of his son, Alan Shastney, who was most recently elected as leader of the United Workers' Party. Do you think that the Prime Minister's remarks regarding Michael Shastney could in any way affect his relationship with the business community, of which Mr. Michael Shastney is a very prominent, very influential member?
I don't think so. I think if the business community were to interact with the Prime Minister simply based on how he feels about individuals, then it means that our business communities would not be going anywhere. At the end of the day, when it comes to matters of governance, when it comes to the private sector, the relationship between the private sector and the public sector, it has nothing to do with individual personalities. It has to do with your vision. It has to do with how cooperative you are in terms of developing policies that will enable the private sector to thrive. And coming into office, you would realize that Dr. Anthony has said that we need to ensure that we work hand in hand with the private sector. You would realize that one of his very first initiatives was to set up a task force to look at the ease of doing business. These are the things that affect the business sector. How easy it is for them to set up business, what policies are in place to ensure that we're able to restore growth to the economy. This is what they're concerned about. I don't think as a whole the business sector is too concerned about who talks about the Prime Minister and who the Prime Minister talks about. And so they would be more interested in what the policies are. They would be more interested in how receptive the government of St. Lucia is to their plans, to their initiatives, and how involved the administration is as a whole in developing that sector.
Okay, it's been nearly 2 years since the St. Lucia Labour Party has been in government. One of the mantras during the election was better days.
Yes, and jobs.
So would you say those better days have arrived?
We can take it from so many angles, Kendall. And when the St. Lucia Labour Party spoke about better days, we were speaking out against corruption in government. The St. Lucian public, they were simply fed up with waking up every morning to a scandal, fed up of having government ministers in breaches of the law, fed up with having incidents where the cabinet acted to protect its own as opposed to working in the interests of the country. They were simply fed up with situations where government ministers were being accused of being involved and directing the police and all these kinds of things that tarnish the reputation of our country, and even on the outside. The election of Kenny Anthony as Prime Minister and the St. Lucia Labour Party has restored the image of St. Lucia. And you could go anywhere around the world and people speak highly of St. Lucia, speak very highly of our Prime Minister and our country. And so when you speak about the image of this country, when you speak about the image of the government, better days are indeed here. You also have to look on the promises made in the manifesto. Because if you are to judge a government on its performance, then you have to go to the blueprint. What did the government say it would do? Where are we? The government of St. Lucia stated very clearly its policies in the manifesto. Even the hard decisions, such as VAT, was clearly printed in that manifesto, and we said we would do it. When we speak about education, the government of St. Lucia said, if you elect me, I will provide $500 to every child entering Form 1 so that the parent is able to prepare that child and that child can go back to school with the necessities. For the second year now, the government of St. Lucia has been doing that. This is better days. The government of St. Lucia, again on the education, said that we will not take away the school transportation subsidy, contrary to what the United Workers' Party said on the platforms. They said, si you vote by Kenny, KTA machine by Sima Maila. And we came into government and we introduced partial zoning, which of course removes the pressure on transportation, on children having to commute far to go to school. But we have kept that transportation subsidy program. And so, in fact, you can say too that this is better days. We said that if you vote for us, we'll be providing the laptops to the students entering Form 4. This is a promise that will be kept. The laptops have been procured. I'm sure you've seen in the Trinidad and Tobago press that they have received the laptops and that a portion of the laptops was on behalf of the government of St. Lucia. And so in September, which is this month, the laptops will be distributed to the Form 4 students. You would have heard also that there was a policy shift, and so the laptops will be provided earlier in that child's secondary school life for so many reasons. And so a promise kept is better days. Now, we spoke about on the infrastructural end. We had for example, after Thomas, so many damages to our infrastructure. The government of St. Lucia at the time seemed to have been moving a bit slowly in terms of restoring these areas. Some of the key areas included the Badalil. We had bridges in so many areas in St. Lucia that was destroyed, that were destroyed and had to be attended to. We said that when we get into office, we will be dealing with it. When we came into office, there were so many slides that were on the Badalil. We have been able to restore two-way traffic to two of the main areas on the Badalil. And if you drove through there recently, you would see that the sidewalls are being repaired. And we can go on, speak about the roads that have been repaired. In Beaufort alone,
we'll go into
we
more
have
detail
a lot
on
that has been done.
And projects,
yes, and so we can refer to all of these things as better days. If you go through the manifesto of the St. Lucia Labour Party and you look at what was promised versus where we are now, despite the challenges. We said we would restore STEP, we restored STEP. That is better days. We said we would create NICE so that we can provide jobs to the people of St. Lucia. We have not provided as many jobs as we would have wished, but we have over 2,500 persons employed under that program. I would call that better days.
Okay, we'll go a little further into the accomplishments of the St. Lucia Labour Party government. Sure. But I want to ask you first, do you think that St. Lucians are better off now than they were 5 or 10 years ago?
All of the things that I just told you in terms of projects implemented by the St. Lucia Labour Party suggest that we are in fact better off than we were back then. There are some critical economic challenges that we cannot ignore. We inherited some very difficult financial times, and at this time what you need is prudent management. You need somebody with the vision, with the experience, and with the willpower to make the tough decisions to take St. Lucia where you want it to be. And as a government, you must constantly be preoccupied with the future. You cannot be short-sighted and make decisions to make people feel good now. You need to make the difficult decisions because St. Lucia is not, will not exist for 5 years. You're not working on a 5-year period, really. If you love your country and you want your country to develop, then you'll be working on a longer-term plan. So when we look at short-term and the stopgap measures that have been put in place, then we would say, of course, had these things had we not done these things, had we not created NICE, then it would mean that there would be over 2,500 persons who are still jobless. Had we not bring back the STEP program, and we have, every time the cycle of that STEP program runs, we have approximately 2,200 persons employed on that program. If there was no STEP, what would they do? And so on the basis of what we have accomplished, whether it is short term, whether it is long term, I will say that St. Lucians are better off, because had it not been for these measures implemented by the government of St. Lucia, we saw absolutely no plans coming from the other side. Up until election day, we had not seen any clear policy, any clear strategy for jobs. We had not seen any clear strategy to get the economy going again. And so if you look at what the government of St. Lucia is doing now, and you take the two budget addresses by Prime Minister Anthony, you would see the short term, the medium term, and the long term goals for this country. But
do you think the government has done a good enough job of selling that vision or that notion that you just described? Well,
when you're constantly up against barriers, such as what Honorable Alva Baptiste spoke about, then what do you expect? The government of St. Lucia has its machinery. The St. Lucia Labour Party has its mechanisms to disseminate information. And there is limited you can do to reach people directly. You constantly have to rely on the media, you have to rely on the news, and this is where the balance would work wonders. Not for every government, not just the St. Lucia Labour Party, but what the St. Lucia Labour Party has done, recognizing all the barriers that exist on the national level, we have decided that we will go directly to the people. And this is why you find that as a press secretary, I am more interactive and I do more one-on-one communication than you would have found in the past. And so I manage my own Facebook page where I put all press releases from the office of the Prime Minister, all his remarks, all his speeches. I interact with people directly. I do the BBM blasts as well, so people know what is happening, what the plans of the government are. On the St. Lucia Labour Party's end, we are now having town hall meetings in every constituency. And in fact, tomorrow the Prime Minister will be in the Meko South constituency, speaking to the individuals there in that constituency as to what plans we have for the constituency and for the country as a whole. And so we no longer relying on one form of contact or information, but we're going directly to the people to let them know what is happening, because the reality is, some may not like to hear it, especially some of them in the media, but the reality is the government is constantly faced with a barrier, with a block, where you have a lot of persons in the media selling their opinions, which is their right, because this is why you have programs and you could share your opinions on things. But these forms of interaction seem to be seem to be more catchy to the person who is listening, as opposed to relying solely on the news. And in terms of information dissemination, you will see that the government of St. Lucia is moving to make some changes within the GIS to change how we disseminate information, how we package the information, and how we give the information to the public. And so all of these changes are happening, recognizing the limitation in interacting with the public, distributing the information, getting it out, letting them know what is there that you can benefit from, where you should go if you need assistance, and so on.
Okay, that was actually going to be my next question, because a lot of the criticism directed at the government is that it has underutilized NTN, GIS, Radio St. Lucia to a certain extent. But we want to open the lines now.
Sure.
Let the callers or the viewers call in with any questions that they may have. But in the interim, can you tell us anything about this proposed merger between NTN and Radio St. Lucia?
Well, the minister has spoken.
Made?
The minister has spoken extensively on that. I think what is happening now is internal, in that the ministry is actually speaking to the staff of the GIS, and so at this point, I think it would be wrong to give information via the media, more information than the staff itself may have. And this is what you work against sometimes. People out there may want information, and they ask for certain things, but they usually do not have a very good understanding of how the system is designed. And I think if there are individuals who will be affected by a policy shift, that it is only fair and right that you consult with them before, that they have information, that they know what is happening, as opposed to making a broad statement to the nation. So when the time comes, the public will be brought abreast and they will know what plans the government of St. Lucia has for GIS, NTN, Radio St. Lucia to a certain extent. When you speak about utilization of the GIS and Radio St. Lucia, there is a very thin line, and you would have served in the media at RSL for some time, so you'd understand that you're working with a very thin line in terms of interaction with these agencies and actually utilizing the services of these agencies, because you do not want to seem like you're directing the program of these agencies, that you are directing their news, that you're directing their talk shows and dictating what the tone of the talk shows should be. And so what you can do is to create your own programs. So for example, I do Inside Government on RSL, and we have an opportunity to bring on our own guests, speak about what is happening in government. And I think with the current system, this is the best that you can do. Create your own programs so that you could get your information out, as opposed to trying to tamper, for want of a better word, with what exists, and then people would misunderstand it as political interference. Okay,
we have our first call, and we'll continue with your point.
Sure.
Hi, good evening, caller. You're on the air.
Good evening, Mr. Moderator.
How are you?
And good evening, Ms. Press Secretary.
Hello, good evening.
Well, it seems like you all doesn't take a walk on the streets to where the poor people cry. I say in Labour not a good government, but what? Everybody crying, poor people crying, rich people crying, middle class crying, everybody crying. I never see something like that in St. Lucia in my life. You understand? And if something can be done in that country, I'm sorry that we are going to lose the next election. That's how I see it. Simple. Take a walk.
Thank you so much for your contribution. This is your point of view. To assume that the government of St. Lucia does, or the individuals in the government are out of touch because they do not work. In fact, that is wrong. The Prime Minister spends so much time in his constituency, and we know. I am not saying that things are the best. I did indicate that things are difficult, but this is not a government that is sitting and waiting for things to change on the international scene. We have put measures in place to assist individuals, and I'm sorry that this caller has not benefited from any of the programs that the government has in place, but you really cannot erase the fact that over 2,500 people are employed under NICE, and you have additional people working on contracts, whether it is to repair bridges, whether it is to build things and so on. So people are engaged. Not everybody is working. I don't think we've ever had a time in St. Lucia where there was full employment, but I accept that things are difficult, and there are individuals who are crying out for help, and the government is not yet able to reach out to them.
Okay, we have another call. Good evening, caller. You're on the air.
Yes, good evening, Jadia.
Hello.
Good evening, Kendall. How are you this evening?
Hello, I'm doing good, thanks.
Okay, I really have to commend you, Jadia. You're a very, very confident young woman. And I think something that contributes to your level of confidence is that you can stand by your conviction. I think it's quite unfortunate because I have been attending a lot of the conferences, and I find it pretty remarkable, Jadia, when you gain an understanding of what a politician has to deal with. Yes. I always marvel at the fact that Dr. Anthony operates as the Prime Minister of the country. I attended the ceremony today of the handing over of the chairmanship of ECCB Monetary Council, and to be able to operate at a particular level where you can make a contribution to those types of entities and boards, and like you rightfully said earlier, you are maintaining your reputation and integrity on our regional and global scene.
Yes.
And then, of course, to have to contend with what is required of you as a politician. And what I find a little bit disheartening is that a lot of times there are so many positive things that are said at those conferences. And of course, they're never highlighted in the media. And whilst, the media, you're looking at the watchdogs of society, when you look at what we demand as a people, we want objective reporting. And one of the things I've noticed, like when I do attend conferences, I understand the political rhetoric sometimes and the wrangling and then some of the things that are said on platform. I've predominantly followed the Labour Party platforms, but I've seen it on the other side where you actually elicit certain responses from the crowd, whereas the message usually is something that is so much more positive, and then you're actually highlighting all of the things that we intend to do. And I was thinking also that, well, because of the constitution of the Labour Party, I have a great appreciation for the structure that's in place as well, because what it means is that Dr. Anthony, as a leader, he is such a strong leader and so well respected by his political colleagues. So what you find is that by mandating that each of the constituency representatives, either elected or not, have their constituency conferences annually, it means that whatever they are facing on a regular basis, be it that they're being asked to do things that are less than ethical, but it means that you're recommitting to serving the public, and it always comes through in the message consistently. So I have to wonder, JD, sometimes as a people we seem to want to defy structure. I'm a business person. I own a business. As a leader that is effective in your business, you will always come up with human resource issues. But I think one of the more predominant challenges that I have faced as a business person in dealing with the human resource is our tendency that when you institute policy within your organization, somebody's always trying to find some way to circumvent it, okay?
Yes,
so, that's some of my views, and I really have an appreciation for the ideology, the philosophy, and the fact that you are such a great orator and such a dynamic young woman, okay?
Thank you so much.
I just wanted to commend you for your contribution.
Yeah, thanks for your call.
Thank you.
She
really said a lot, but I just wanted to highlight the point that she's making. When you actually sit in a conference, and this conference lasts for hours, and speaker after speaker after speaker, it is a platform for the speakers to highlight the positives, and they do that. And sometimes a point that is made to get a humorous point, or to get people to laugh and to just have fun, that is sometimes carried across the media, and they create such a serious story out of it. They cut out the laughter, they cut out the reaction, and then they present that point, and you get a totally different reaction from the person who's sitting and listening at home. And I've seen it happen so many times. And like I said, at the end of the day, it is what interests the person who's writing the news. You cannot dictate to somebody what you want them to carry for your conference. For you to do so, you need your own media house, you need your own TV station. And so it's just the unfortunate reality that we exist in. And it is not something that happens simply in St. Lucia. If you monitor the media across the world, you will realize that is why so many political parties are now moving to establish their own radio stations and their own TV stations, so that they can bring out the message. And if it is that the Prime Minister's address has to be played in full, you really cannot mandate any TV or radio station to do it. So maybe the St. Lucia Labour Party needs to move in that direction, to invest in its own media house, not just operatives, but to get its own radio and TV station, so that your message can be sent across uncompromised.
Okay, we have another call. Good evening, caller. You're on the air.
Hey, good evening, JDO.
Hello, good evening.
Good evening. We missed you in the South this evening.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, I know. I host a program on Wednesday nights, Kendall, so you'd have to apologize to the people of the South.
Yes, but listening to you there, I just want to thank you for clearing the air on the misconception. People, especially in the media, trying to say that Dr. Anthony is tackling Mr. Chasney. You jump into a ring of pigs, you're going to be treated like a pig. You put on a soldier's uniform, you have to fight a war. And I don't think people are matching it to Lon Theophilus' parents. Lon Theophilus' parents did the right thing. They presented the man on a stage to the public. Yes. But you never hear Mr. Theophilus go on a campaign trail criticizing anybody. And that's what Chasney is doing, and he will be treated like any other politician. But I'm just listening to you then, and listening to your host ask you the questions about the media. I must admit, it is sometimes disgusting when you listen to some of the prick sticks in the morning and the different people who try and spin. I mean, we know the truth, but the listenership, yes, I don't know, somehow I wish we had created more laws when we first came into government to deal with those people in the media who can present news, then be allowed to spin it on their own and convince people in their own tone, whether it's English or Creole. I mean, it is disgusting when you can wake up in the morning and the first word that comes from your mouth, even before you kiss your wife, is Kenny Anthony, and when you go to sleep, it's Kenny Anthony. I mean, some people are obsessed with the man. I mean, they don't see the good in him. Some people don't understand what it takes to be a prime minister, to meet people, to walk on the streets, to meet the needs. I must admit, one of those days, what I recommend to you is Dr. Anthony should start, apart from yourself on Wednesday, going to Beaufort, invite the media, house by house, one-on-one, to walk with him through the streets of Beaufort, so they can understand the love that he has for his people, not just Beaufort, the people of St. Lucia, the love that he has for every one of us in his constituency, whether it's Flambeau or Labour, and that's what people need to know. So I think you should air that out. And somehow I want to tell St. Lucia, while I have that media, prick sticks in the morning and the people that spin the news on their own and misrepresent the truth, listen to them. Look at them as entertainers, nothing else. Thank you very much.
Thanks for your contribution, caller.
Yes, and I think this is a wonderful suggestion that he's making, that we need to invite the media to walk with Dr. Anthony. You should see Dr. Anthony interact with a group of children, and randomly he walks into his constituency, he meets them coming from school, and I just had an experience with him on Monday. In fact, we were walking out of the office hurriedly, going on a site visit, and he realized that there were two children standing near the entrance. He walked past and he went back. He said, "Hello, how was your first day at school?" And I was long gone. I mean, I was close to the vehicle already, and you should have seen how he interacted with them with such tenderness and genuine care, and spoke to them about the importance of their education. When Dr. Anthony is in a business suit, dealing with the matters of the state, dealing with finance, dealing with the budget, dealing with the situation that currently exists between the U.S. and the Royal St. Lucia Police Force. He is totally different to when he is dressed down in his blue shirt and his pants, going to visit the children at KidsNet, or walking into his constituency to find out how they're doing, assessing his projects. Totally different. But we usually see the individual who is dealing with state matters. Most times Dr. Anthony is presented in the news, he's presented as a prime minister, and most persons do not have an appreciation of the seriousness of such a role, and how sometimes you must deal with certain issues diplomatically and differently and very carefully, as opposed to when you're interacting with your constituents or your people one-on-one.
Okay, we were looking at some of the accomplishments of the government, but before we go back into that, let's take another call.
Sure.
Good evening, caller. You're on the air.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi, good evening.
Good night.
How are you?
Yeah, my question is this. Do you find that the Prime Minister has ever did anything wrong that you would tell him? And why don't the Prime Minister speak to the nation regarding the Alba situation? Because I believe it's a big problem that a lot of us do not know what's happening in the Alba situation. So my question, as I ask you, has Kenny Anthony done anything wrong that you would tell him exactly that is wrong?
Sure, caller. I like that question. I really love that question. In fact, I was hoping that Kendall would have asked me that question.
Yeah, I'm not yet finished.
Yeah, sure.
Go ahead.
Yeah, as I said to you, if he has done anything wrong, would you, as a person, let him...
Okay, we lost that call. But that is one of the issues that has been front and center in the media.
Yes.
The Alba situation, especially in light of the U.S. decision to bar Royal St. Lucia Police Force officers from participating in any activity.
I don't see the connection between the two, and it is the constant link that is being made between the two that worries me.
Okay,
but we will get to that. But I really need to answer the question by our last
caller. We'll get back to that.
Sure.
Good evening, caller. You're on the air.
Yeah, I want JD to tell me if what Harold After did in Sofre, is it criminal or is it okay to sit back and watch your constituents with somebody?
What did he do?
To sit back and allow his people to beat down the man in the meeting.
He sat back and allowed somebody...
Were you at that meeting, caller?
No, but the
did you witness it for yourself?
DBS gave the news.
Okay.
Did DBS said that the parliamentary representatives... What the guy said. Okay.
That he was there. He was right there. He was hosting the meeting. He wouldn't be absent at his own meeting.
Yes, of course. I understand
but it's a bit irresponsible to say that he sat back and let people beat on the victim or the alleged victim.
So why nobody tried to stop no separation?
But you don't know that, caller. You admitted that you were not at the meeting. Yeah, but thanks for your call. Yeah, let's go back to the Alba situation, because the United Workers' Party has asserted that the real reason for the U.S.'s decision has more to do with Alba than the alleged human rights abuses by the Royal St. Lucia Police Force.
Do you believe that? Do you believe the UWP?
Is that the case?
Absolutely not. And you know what really puzzles me with this whole thing? Anand Chasney speaks, and when he makes his statements, he wants to bring across the view that he loves America and that he's on the side of America and so on. In fact, he's begging the Prime Minister to go to Washington to speak to the Americans. And then in the same sentence, he flips on the other side and suggests that America is lying to St. Lucia. The Americans said, and in fact, Dr. Anthony had a conversation with the ambassador, America's ambassador to the OACS, and he disclosed this in his address to the nation.
Can I ask you just hold that thought for a second?
Oh, sure,
Let's take another call. Good evening, caller. You're on the air.
Hello.
Good evening.
What's on your mind?
Hello.
Hi, you're on the air.
Yes. Are you hearing me?
Loud and clear.
I can barely hear you, but anyway. Good evening. Good evening, Julia.
Hello.
As ever, a wonderful job.
Thank you.
One of the things that I need to bring to your attention, and you made a point earlier when you said that the media has their own agenda, and I agree. And sometimes when you have a constituency conference, they choose whatever that they are going to decide to give more airplay. And I agree.
But we know sometimes we can do ourselves a lot of injustice if we allow certain things to get out of hand to an extent that we give the media more ammunition in terms of not dealing with the core issue, but dealing with the roaches or cantankerous issues, because we ourselves got caught up in that whole thing. And I want to refer to the situation in Beaufort. I think based on all report that Mr. Fletcher gave a wonderful speech, but that was completely wiped out and negated because somebody else come in and were more cocky and stuff, and the media played on that. So sometimes we ourselves need to be responsible and to understand the role that the media play and the direction that they want to go and stop them from going in this direction. That is one. The second thing is the Alba issue is a very clear issue. In my view, the Labour Party and ourselves need to allow Mr. Shastri to drown himself in that whole Alba argument. And I'll tell you why. Because at the end of the day, he and every single person in St. Lucia who's making it an Alba issue with regard to the sanction on the police, when the United States would have eventually cut off or lift the embargo on St. Lucia, they will all look like fools and whatever word that I can't use in the press right now. So the Labour Party need to see, let us wait and see whether the issue was an Alba issue or a human rights issue. And that question will be answered in the next few months. And when it is answered, then everybody who's pushing the argument that it was an Alba issue, they will be looking like fools. It's simple as that. You don't even need to answer the question because the United States will answer the question pretty soon. Yes. Simple as that, And I think the Labour Party need people like you, and they need to listen. Sometimes the speakers, when they come up, they need to listen. I know how it is, when you're in a public forum and you get carried away and excited. But let us not play on the media. And we are playing too much into the hands. If certain individuals are not important, just forget about them and proceed with whatever that you have, like you're doing tonight. You made several points there of significant achievement in respect to the blueprint with the people that a lot of us sometimes didn't understand what it is for the better days. But the better days has to be entwined or connected to the blueprint. And that's wonderful. So it is the direction that we need to go so that the people can listen to. And like I said, the issue is a non-issue. Because pretty soon it's going to be answered. And everybody who's pushing this are going to look like a fool. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so
much. I appreciate your contribution. And the point that the points that the caller has raised, in that the responsibility does not lie simply on the media end, that we too have to be responsible as well in how we interact, and this is absolutely correct. If I may just make one more point on the suggestions that the US has stopped assistance because of Alba. I would imagine that if the issue is Alba, that there would be a complete cutoff of aid to St. Lucia. Subsequent to the decision taken against the Royal St. Lucia Police Force, and the United States was very clear. There was no ambiguity in terms of the reason. They actually pointed to the situation and was very clear on the Operation Restore Confidence. Subsequent to that, the Borderley Correctional Facility has benefited from training of the U.S. The St. Lucia Fire Service received fire trucks from the U.S. And we even received financial aid from the United States of America subsequent to the decision taken against the Royal St. Lucia Police Force. And this is why I can say confidently that the line that is being pushed by the United Workers' Party, and even those who claim to know so much about international relations, it's really flawed, and it is simply to raise the alarm and to cause people to fear and to have a misconception as to what exactly Alba is. and anybody can go online and go to the website and pick up information. Go to the Venezuelan embassy that is located right there in St. Lucia and ask about ALBA. You could go to the Cuban embassy. They too are members of ALBA. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs, they too would have information on ALBA and what it is. And I think we need to inform ourselves and not play into the message that is being sold by the opposition.
Good point. We have another call though. Good evening, caller. You're on the air.
Good evening.
Hi, good evening. How are you?
I'm okay. I'm all right.
What's on your mind tonight?
Let me. I'm watching the news, and then I am seeing about the school. They're talking about the school. Labour Party only have a year and some months. What they were doing all the time they were there with those schools is not because Labour Party is in power that those schools are leaking.
Is that the extent of your contribution?
Absolutely correct. And we inherited some terrible situations, and it is our responsibility to fix it. And this government of St. Lucia will work to fix the issues. But if we are to look at what is happening with our schools in St. Lucia, the Ministry of Infrastructure and the Ministry of Education currently spearheading the extension of the Miku Primary School, and you have a completely new wing being constructed on that school to accommodate the students of the infant school. For years, there was a situation at this school, and when you hear I speak of Miku, then you know where the political loyalty lies. And it took this government to come in and to address this situation as a matter of urgency. The Denier Riviere Combined School, major construction works happen. In fact, they could not even move in on Monday because they still had to be moving the furniture and so on back. And so this government moved very speedily to ensure that renovation works occurred. You also have the government moving in to do remedial works at the Schuser Secondary School. It is really not the situation we would have liked. We want all of our schools to be safe. We want a safe learning environment. But nobody can challenge the St. Lucia Labour Party when it comes to education and how seriously it takes education. The St. Lucia Labour Party is the same party that abolished the split shift system that we had in Castries, and this system can take responsibility for a number of social ills that we currently face as it relates to violent crime and so on, because our children, while they should have been in school, they were home unsupervised. It is the same St. Lucia Labour Party that introduced universal secondary education. We value education, and we really want every single child in this country to have a quality education. And so the condition of our schools, it remains a major issue for us. And if you were to look at 2 years, and how many schools have received attention, how much work the Minister for Infrastructure and the Minister for Education. In fact, I think the Deputy Prime Minister really takes this thing personally and to heart, because he visits the schools himself, and so they know of the conditions, but there is that much you can do when you are dealing with limited resources. And I can assure the parents, I know that there is a concern. Many of our schools are old, and they were constructed way before 1992. Some of the schools are 50 years old and so on. But you have seen that the policy of the St. Lucia Labour Party places emphasis on education, and throughout our tenure in office, we are constantly working to modernize the education sector. We built a brand new school in Pi, a brand new school in Marigot. I mean, in Ager, the Labour Party takes education seriously. We are not saying that there are not any issues, but we are saying that we need some patience, we need some time, because we inherited a country that was in a mess, and we really cannot transform it overnight. Okay,
we'll continue our conversation. We have a commercial break, and when we come back, we'll talk with the press secretary to the Prime Minister, Mrs. G.J. Shapia Emmanuel, on a number of other issues. We'll be right back.